Hello and welcome back to an episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. There's nothing better than combining the things we love into one. Peanut butter and jelly, basketball, the Expendables, or as my friend George would say, spaghetti and milk. Take it up with George, guys. It's not something I'm into. But anyway, I love martial arts films and I love sci-fi, and it's just that much sweeter when the two genres come together as they do every so often. And so today I thought it would be cool to count down the top 9 martial artists in science fiction. At number 9 we have Wharf from Star Trek, the legendary Starfleet officer. Wharf was born on the Klingon homeworld of Kronos in 2340 to one of the Klingon Empire's greatest houses, that of his father Moog. Wharf, as was customary for Klingons, was trained as a warrior from an early age, learning to hunt at 5 and performing the Rite of Ascension, the mark of transition into official warriorhood, in his teens. In 2364, Wharf joined the crew of the USS Enterprise under Captain Jean-Luc Picard, and the rest is history. Wharf was an expert in the martial art of mok'bara, the basis of Klingon hand-to-hand combat. Mok'bara was similar to Tai Chi, as its training process was largely meditative in nature, and its movements were slow and graceful. While Wharf couldn't do much good with a phaser, the true martial artist doesn't use guns anyway. He fights fire with chi power. And in combination with a batleth, the traditional Klingon bladed weapon, Wharf was a formidable foe, combining the weapon with his strikes into what can only be described as batleth kata. Of course, Wharf got his butt kicked all the time, probably because Tai Chi makes absolutely no sense as a martial art. He probably should have taken Vulcan Jiu-Jitsu or something. Yeah, Wharf wasn't the best fighter, but I had to include him on this list as a reward for his effort, for he always gave his all. In 8th place we have Lulu from The Fifth Element. Lulu was one of the supreme beings of the universe, and by that I mean just Milla Jovovich in general. The Lulu that we know is actually the second form of this ultimate being. She was a humanoid weapon originally designed by an alien race for the purpose of combating a dark force known as the Great Evil. When, long story short, the first form of this being was destroyed in an ambush en route to Earth, the only remaining portion of the body, an arm, was used to recreate the being into this Lulu. Lulu was no fan of violence. She was an emotional and empathetic creature who was appalled by scenes of war. But that said, she was known to be a perfect human specimen in terms of her physical and mental abilities. She had superhuman strength, durability, agility, and reflexes. Put together, Lulu was highly adept at hand-to-hand combat, and for someone who didn't like to hurt people, she seemed to be really good at it. And thanks to her enhanced healing ability, she was able to overcome the weakness that almost all martial artists have: bullets. Along with her skills in martial arts, Lulu was also capable of learning and processing mass amounts of information rapidly, and like anyone with orange or red hair, she could unite the power of the 4 elemental stones to form the divine light. At number 7, I'ma have to go with Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man. Phoenix went down as the most psychopathic criminal of the 20th century. In 1996, he killed a bunch of hostages he had taken and was apprehended by law enforcement and incarcerated in California's new cryopenitentiary, where he was frozen along with the cop who had been chasing him, John Spartan. And while in stasis, he was exposed to subliminal rehabilitation techniques. In 2032, Phoenix was brought out of sleep for a parole hearing, and he escaped and continued to wreak havoc on Los Angeles. Phoenix was brutally violent and sadistic, but he was also smart, cunning, and humorous. And he had the skills to back up his bravado. He was adept in both firearms usage and hand-to-hand combat. Though most martial artists are seen as people of honor, Phoenix used his fighting skills to terrorize the innocent. He was a fearsome human being with only a single weakness: the IRS. At number 6 is John Preston from Equilibrium. In 2072, those who survived the globally catastrophic World War III dwelled in a city-state known as Libria, which was run by a totalitarian government which required citizens to take a drug known as prosium that suppressed their emotions and encouraged obedience. Don't take the drugs, get put to death. Also, this is what prosium withdrawal looks like.
What don't you get about it?
I was looking at the light.
Oh, good for you! And how was it?
An elite division of Librian law enforcement known as the Grammaton Clerics were responsible for carrying out the government's draconian orders and making sure people behaved. These clerics were trained in a martial art known as gun kata, and one of its best adherents was high-ranking cleric John Preston. Preston's skills as a martial artist are unique to this list, as gun kata combines hand-to-hand combat with firearms usage, though admittedly there's some debate to be had about how much the former is really needed when you have the latter, but 10 out of 10 for style. And if you want to hear more about the history of gun kata, I did a video on it a while back. Go ahead and check it out if you wish. Anyway, I'm sure some of you wanted John Preston ranked a little bit higher, but given that he uses a gun, I felt that he shouldn't be higher than 5. At number 5, we have Max Walker from Time Cop. In this world, by 1994, time travel had been invented and was used by criminals for their nefarious purposes. Just a side note here, people were really bold about what they thought was going to come of the 90s in terms of technological progress, and by the end of it, the best we really got was N64 and the end of acid wash jeans. Anyway, in the Time Cop universe's 1994, the Time Enforcement Commission was established to police time travel. Perhaps the TEC's most skilled operative was Max Walker, a man who turned to the force after the death of his wife. Walker ended up uncovering a massive scheme to use time travel in order to financially benefit from the stock market crash of 1929. It's not explicitly stated what Walker's specific skills in martial arts were, but it seemed to be a combination of kick-first disciplines, including kickboxing and taekwondo. Walker wasn't so great with his words, but there was no problem he couldn't solve with his kicks. The more difficult the obstacle, the higher the kick. At number 4, we have Cara Doon, ally of the Mandalorian Din Djarin. Cara Doon was an Alderaanian who served as an Alliance shock trooper during the Galactic Civil War. The words Rebel Shock Trooper alone should be enough to explain why Cara was so good in combat. Shock troopers were among the most elite infantry in the Alliance's ranks, and as recruits they were subjected to some of the harshest training methods known to the galaxy. They were left to the wolves, literally, and had to figure out how to survive. Shock troopers were tasked with carrying out highly dangerous missions during the Civil War, including tracking down Imperial warlords. When the Civil War ended and all of the Imperial warlords were either apprehended, put down, or had disappeared, the shock troopers were transitioned to peacekeeping duties, something that Cara was not down for. Instead, she became a mercenary and continued to exercise her talents for hunting down and eliminating targets. Doon is another entrant on this list who was more than adept with firearms, but even without a gun, she was a deadly warrior. Skilled in striking and grappling, as seen when she bested a Mandalorian in hand-to-hand combat. She also might have beaten the same Mandalorian in arm wrestling had Baby Yoda not gone all psycho on her and attempted to force choke her to death. At number 3, we have Gabriel Law, or Gabe Law, from The One. Of course, I could list one of many names here because in The One's reality, there are different versions of the same person existing simultaneously from one dimension to another. Anyway, Gabriel Law was an agent of the Multiverse Authority, an agency tasked with policing interdimensional travel, and he used his position to track down every version of himself and eliminate each one. As each time one bit the dust, the remaining versions grew stronger. Listen, going by the same logic, if you feel yourself getting dumber, it probably means in another dimension somewhere, another version of you was just born, and in order to get smarter, you need to go and kill him. Back to Law though, he hadn't quite reached the godlike status that would supposedly result from being the last version of oneself remaining, as Los Angeles police officer Gabe Law was still alive, and had also experienced the same enhancements to his strength and abilities. Of course, both men were supremely skilled in martial arts, and though we don't know the specific training or style, their moves reflect learning in wushu, a Chinese martial art developed in 1949 in an effort to standardize the different traditions of Chinese martial arts. At number 2, we have River Tam from Serenity or Firefly. River Tam grew up on the core planet of Osiris, where she excelled in her studies well beyond her peers. Discovered to be a child prodigy, in her early teens she ended up being sent to a government learning facility known as the Academy, supposedly a private school for the most gifted children in the Alliance. But really a secret government experiment designed to create the perfect assassin. As part of the program, River was trained and experimented on, which included surgery to remove her amygdala, the clusters of nuclei located in each cerebral hemisphere that are involved in the experiencing of emotions. On the bright side, somehow in the course of what she went through at the Academy, River ended up with psychic abilities. That said, given the mutilation of her brain, she often came off cold to those around her and was prone to violent outbreaks. Rather than feel nothing, she simply couldn't control her emotions. However, despite the experimentation that was done on her, she maintained her superior intelligence as well as a host of other abilities that made her an asset to the crew of the Serenity, the Firefly-class transport ship captained by Malcolm Reynolds. River's skill with firearms was nothing to scoff at, but perhaps her most imposing asset was her mastery of hand-to-hand combat. Originally a dancer, her fighting style could be described as a kung fu kickboxing hybrid with a tinge of ballet. Her fluidity of movement and sharp reflexes allowed her to take out multiple enemies on her own with just her bare hands. Finally, at number 1, we have Chirrut, hero of the Battle of Scarif. Chirrut was born on Jedha, one of the moons of Na-Jedha, in 52 BBY. A blind man, Chirrut was a member of the Guardians of the Wills, an order of spiritual warrior monks who were active on Jedha during the Imperial era. They were famous for their skills in combat, which often included the use of special handcrafted bowcasters, though Chirrut was also known for his mastery of the staff. 19 years after the birth of the Galactic Empire, Chirrut was working alongside his companion Baze Malbus as a traveling preacher when he met Jyn Erso, a soldier of the Alliance to restore the Republic, in Jedha City. He and Baze would go on to help Jyn and the rest of the Alliance steal plans for the first Death Star from the Imperial forces. Chirrut's spirituality helped him focus his mind and overcome his blindness to become a great warrior. And though he never proved himself to be Force sensitive, despite his strong belief that he was, he didn't much need Force powers to defend himself anyway, given his mastery of Zama Shiwo, a martial art native to Jedha known as the Inward Eye of the Outward Hand. Not only did this martial art provide its practitioners with superb skills in combat, but it was also said to give them the ability to alter their heart rate and oxygen intake, thus almost turning them superhuman. Chirrut was such a great character that, of course, Disney made sure to kill him off immediately. Anyways, that's the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below who I missed. I'm sure I missed plenty of great martial artists in science fiction. Anyways, remember to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.